Let's not beat around the bush on this one, but to put it mildly, Eternals is a disasterpiece of intergalactic proportions. While Eternals attempted to break away from the MCU formula, it would be an understatement to say the plot fell flat. Several aspects of the Eternals don't make any sense in the context of the MCU, particularly their absence from the Infinity Saga when Thanos snapped half of life away. Characters explain that they were instructed not to interfere with the humans' development.
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, all the other terrible things throughout history.
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
Okay, but you need a massive population for a Celestia to be born from the planet. So Thanos wiping out half the world's population is very much in your wheelhouse. And yet, 15 minutes later after saying they can't intervene, Phastos is developing a steam engine for humans. But that's the least of the movie's problems. And despite having 10 Eternals, the star-studded cast wasn't able to compensate for the weak character arc. This movie was primed for a Disney Plus TV show. However, viewers were unable to connect with the characters or the plot as a whole, with little planned for the Eternals, few connections to the larger MCU ensemble, and world-altering plot development by the end of the movie. Like a giant Celestia sticking out at the top of the earth, which hardly any MCU movie or TV show acknowledges, their film ranks as the most forgettable. It's unfortunate that directing a Marvel movie has become the key indicator of success for a talented aspiring director. The Marvel car is a massive CGI-enhanced vehicle capable of navigating black holes and shooting plasma rays from its headlights, but it always moves in the same direction to arrive at the same predetermined location. If you excel in your field as Chloe Zhao did by winning Best Director and Best Picture Oscars for a contemplative indie road movie Nomadland in 2020, you are ceremoniously handed the keys to the Marvel car. That is not to say that Zhao's Eternals aren't distinctive from other Marvel products. This film features the first deaf superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as the most diverse cast of super beings the franchise has yet to offer, as well as a predominantly featured gay-male relationships, be it a PG-13 rated sex scene between two other important characters. Scenes after scene is drenched in the warm light of Zhao's preferred time of day, the pre-dusk golden hour, making Eternals as sociological, inclusive, and artistically stunning as any film in the series. Yet, it's also one of the laziest and poorest Marvel films I've ever seen. It takes place over a long period of time in many places around the world and the cosmos, but it has the oddly confining atmosphere of a Saturday afternoon serial that was shot exclusively in a windowless studio. The huge cast of the Eternals is renowned for its astonishingly diverse cast, which never comes across as forced. For the most part, the leadership group was successful in capturing the essence of what the world looks like as a whole. The disadvantage of having such a vast ensemble is how many characters the narrative must accommodate. In addition to the Eternals, there are more than a dozen more characters, the majority of whom are equally important, such as Dane Whitman, the Celestials, and Deviants. With so many characters, they cannot all be accommodated to give the story justice. Films like Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame all balance the many aspects of their story masterfully because they were multiple movies before these team-ups. The fact that every single character in Eternals plot is brand new and the script had to create them from scratch is one of the major challenges the movie faced. Even trying to sum up the movie is a daunting task, but I'll do my best. Thousands of years ago, the Celestials, a race of even more powerful space beings known as the Eternals, produced a group of immortal, celestial deviants known as the Eternals. The Eternals have been hiding out as common mortals all over the earth for millennia. As the group's tech wizard Phasos points out, this necessitates frequent home moves, so your neighbours don't notice how you don't seem to age. As shown by the flashbacks woven throughout the first half of the film, members of the Eternals were present at many of the humans' worst atrocities, including the siege of the ancient city-state of Tenochtitlan by Spanish colonial forces and the dropping of the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. However, the Eternals are prohibited from interfering in human affairs by an ancient code akin to Robocop and his prime directives, but they lack the ability to use their superhuman abilities to address the global issues caused by humans' immoral behavior. The Eternals are now confronted with an existential and even religious dilemma. What was their purpose if not to use the abilities bestowed upon them by the Celestials to benefit the world they have grown to love? Is it possible that Arishem, the celestial space giant who has ruled over them for millennia, is finally calling for some opposition? As for the Deviants, a race of monsters that assemble vaguely looping, wolf-like CGI creatures made of bundles of grey extension cables, threaten Earth once more. The Eternals must band together. A major issue of the MCU has always been their villain problem, and the Eternals unfortunately continues that trend. The Deviants drag the story down at every turn, rivaling Malatek from Thor: The Dark World. They never offered anything to the tale. In addition to having a drab and unappealing design, instead they appear only when the story requires an action beat before fading. What is their true role in the story? The ethical and philosophical questions they addressed lasted for a split second and acted mainly as a vehicle for the topic. The narrative attempted to give Crow meaning, but he didn't feel any different from the mindless drones who followed him. It felt strange when he started talking about his life's mission. He never felt at ease in any scenario. It was a perplexing situation, and bringing the character into something he had no business being in was unpleasant, and questionably, especially since he died shortly after. The concept of the Deviants has a high possibility of succeeding and drawing a believable contrast to the Eternals themselves, one that shows that despite their seeming distinctions, they're in fact the same. Unfortunately, Eternals fall short of this goal, presenting the audience with a generic and forgettable opponent who merely appear to advance the plot and have no actual depth. It didn't help that the writers crammed him into the film's best sequence in the last act. The dramatic confrontation between Icarus and his family was terrific, but Crow, who the plot had all but forgotten about, merely happened to wander onto the shore. Anyway, back to the plot. Yes, I'm still summing up the plot.
I need 5.
Ajax, their leader, has gathered them after spending their semi-retirement on a beautiful South Dakota ranch. She walks in wearing a cowboy hat and a sheepskin vest. Cersei is one of the most well-adjusted Eternals and comes the closest to being the protagonist in this epic multi-character tale. She restricts her superhero activities to her free time because she works throughout the day as a teacher at the Natural History Museum in London. When her child is about to be crushed by a massive falling object, as happened twice in the opening sequence of Eternals, Cersei's ability to turn any material into any other material comes in handy, but totally against the very foundations of their existence. But who cares, right? The movie sure doesn't. Cersei's earthly boyfriend, Jon Snow, is unaware of her celestial past, but a part of her remains connected to fellow Eternals Icarus, with whom she had a centuries-long romantic relationship, who has now returned to fight the Deviants with his allegedly unbeatable ability to shoot laser beams from his eyes while hovering broodingly in midair. There are numerous more Eternals. Gilgamesh, who is primarily responsible for keeping an eye on the erratic Athena. She's a country music-haired glamour puss in a white catsuit with the unique ability to summon an invincible golden sword from thin air. Because of a mental condition brought on by immortality, Athena occasionally attacks her fellow Eternals as if they were enemies. When this happens, her eyes morph into an opalescent marbles, which is a good look for her. And that's the Eternals lineup. Oh wait, I kid, there's more.
I need 5.
Sprite, the lone minor Eternal, is a perpetual adolescent who lusts after a handsome Icarus and wishes, like Pinocchio, to be transformed into a real female woman. Druig is a rebel who uses his psychic abilities to establish a remote community of peaceful, albeit brainwashed human followers in the Amazon jungle. Another is Kingo, a comedic relief superhero. Despite his ability to unleash lethal fireballs at will, he is more concerned with maintaining his position as one of Bollywood's top male stars. In one of the film's funniest jokes, Kingo poses as both his father and grandfather to fool another character into thinking he's been in the Indian film industry for 3 generations. After leaving a Bollywood dance scene to join his mighty ex-co-workers, Kingo drags along his valet, one of the few highlights of the movie, to produce a puff-piece documentary about the Eternals. Although it appears unlikely that none of the superheroes would object to being publicly exposed after millennia of secrecy, this setting provides some welcome levity among the somber pomp that follows. The script for the movie, written by Chloe Chow, Patrick Burley and Ryan Firpo, includes many humour, interspersed with protracted interplanetary hocus-pocus and protracted action sequences. Nevertheless, the pieces only sometimes come together to resemble a whole. Chloe, whose previous 3 films have all focused on the day-to-day struggles of working-class rural outsiders, Chloe seems unprepared for a picture of this scope and is, to be quite candid, uninterested in battle scenes. The lack of a single clearly defined antagonist may be to blame for this film's slow pace and what can only be described as a lack of narrative muscle turn. In place of the giant purple alien Thanos from the Avengers saga, whose firm belief in the righteousness of his must-destroyed half-the-universe mission made him an actual character with a comprehensible, if horrifying, motivation, we get a sad, ropey CGI dogs with no apparent goals other than their desire to destroy the Eternals. Because the film's central battle takes place in a landscape overrun by animated super beasts, a scene in which Thesos criticizes himself for allowing his scientific advances to usher in the atomic age feels out of place. Eternals cinematography uses a little more natural light and wide open spaces than other Marvel films, but the needs of a 200 million multinational operation eventually takes precedent over any aspirations to authorship. That's fine. A filmmaker of Chow's caliber has earned the right to try her hand at one of the major genres of the 21st century. She also has the right to make a bad film, dismiss it and move on. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe exists to build up future films, these films' success is due to their wide and continual continuity. Thus, it is ironic to suggest that Eternals had a defect in that they hinted at the future. As one exits the theatre, they should be thrilled about the film they just saw. Furthermore, the film should be self-contained, with no need for a setup to have a beginning, middle and end. Many believe that this is where the plot fell short. Others voiced their delight, but not for the first segment. Some viewers expressed excitement about what was to come rather than what they had already seen. Overall, the plot feels unfinished, given how it ends, because practically every character in their main story is left on a cliffhanger, and the majority of the characters do not receive any form of conclusion from the movie's events. With that, I declare The Eternals a Disasterpiece. Well, that's enough rambling for one day.